the night Atlanta thought it had seen every twist in the love and hip-hop universe. Kirk Frost dropped a bombshell that left even the most seasoned fans gasping for air. Cameras were rolling when whispers of a secret affair began to spill across social media like wildfire. And within hours, the Frost household was thrown into chaos. Kirk, usually calm and calculating, was suddenly on the defensive as shocking screenshots, late-night text messages, and a mysterious woman's voice note began making the rounds. Rasheeda, the queen of composure, was blindsided. Sources close to the couple claim she confronted Kirk in their lavish Buckhead home with a fury that could be heard down the street. Neighbors say doors slammed, voices echoed, and Kirk's desperate pleas for a private conversation only fueled the speculation. Fans are stunned, friends are choosing sides, and even cast members who swore they would stay neutral are spilling tea. What started as a quiet evening turned into a full-blown spectacle of betrayal. With cameras catching Kirk pacing the driveway while Rasheeda locked herself inside with her phone in hand. Witnesses describe him as shaken, near tears, begging for a chance to explain while producers scrambled to keep up with the unfolding disaster. Is this the scandal that finally breaks the Frost empire? Or will Rasheeda's legendary strength turn the tables once again? Stay tuned. Because this isn't just another love and hip-hop fight, this is the night Kirk Frost was forced to face every secret he swore would never see the light of day. Under the glare of Atlanta's restless night, Kirk Frost stood at the center of a storm he could no longer control. His phone buzzing with relentless notifications as the weight of the scandal tightened around his chest like a vice. The whispers that had started earlier in the evening were now full-blown screams across social media, and every new post seemed to slice another piece of his carefully guarded life apart. Inside the Frost home, Rasheeda paced the hardwood floors with a fury that mixed heartbreak and disbelief. Her eyes sharp and searching, as if the walls themselves might reveal the answers Kirk refused to give. "You think I'm stupid?" Her voice cut through the silence like glass. "You think I don't know when something's been going on behind my back?" Kirk swallowed hard, his usual smooth confidence drained to a shaky plea. "Babe, please, just listen to me for 1 minute," he begged, stepping forward only to have Rasheeda hold up a hand like a barrier he could not cross. Outside, the street was alive with the hum of curious neighbors and a few opportunistic fans who had rushed to the property. The moment a live stream hinted at chaos, phones were held high, camera lights blinking like restless stars as producers scrambled to keep the scene contained. Inside, every second felt like a slow burn. Kirk tried again, his voice cracking under the weight of his own fear. "It's not what you think." It got blown out of proportion, but Rasheeda was relentless, her eyes narrowing as she threw a screenshot onto the marble countertop. The glow of the screen exposing a trail of late-night messages that no husband could easily explain. Blown out of proportion. "Who is she, Kirk? Who is this woman texting you at 2 in the morning?" Her words carried the sting of betrayal, and Kirk's silence only deepened the wound. He shifted from foot to foot, hands clasped as if praying for a miracle, but none came. It was business, he finally managed, but the excuse fell flat, echoing in the cold air of the room like a confession disguised as a lie. Rasheeda's voice trembled now, not from weakness but from the sheer force of emotions she refused to suppress. "Business doesn't sound like this," she snapped, reading a fragment of a message aloud, the words dripping with a familiarity that made Kirk flinch. Outside, the crowd thickened, and the faint sound of a producer's headset crackled with frantic instructions. But neither of them seemed to care. This was no longer about the show. It was raw, unscripted heartbreak spilling out in real time. Kirk stepped closer, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Rasheeda, you know me. You know my heart. Don't let a bunch of screenshots ruin what we built." But Rasheeda's eyes, once soft with trust, now held a storm he couldn't calm. "What we built," she shot back. "I built this. I carried us when you were out chasing dreams and making deals. And this is how you repay me." Her words hit harder than any slap, and Kirk felt the sting deep in his chest. He reached for her, but she pulled away, the gap between them as wide as the years they had spent together. The house seemed to shrink around them, every memory of their shared life now, a silent witness to the chaos unraveling before it. Friends began arriving, drawn by frantic texts and producer calls, their faces a mixture of shock and thinly veiled curiosity. Yandi Smith was the first through the door, her eyes darting between Kirk and Rasheeda as she tried to read the room. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously, but Rasheeda's sharp glance warned her to stay out of it. Behind her, Carly Red slipped in, phone already in hand as if ready to break the story to the world. But one look at Rasheeda's tear-rimmed eyes made her pause. "This ain't the time," Yandi muttered, tugging Carly's sleeve, but the tension was too thick for anyone to leave. Kirk turned toward the newcomers, his voice cracking as he pleaded for a chance to speak. "Please, let me explain before this gets worse," he said, but Rasheeda cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Worse? You think it can get worse than this?" Her voice echoed against the walls, and somewhere in the house a door slammed, the sound like a gunshot in the tense air. Fans watching from outside could only guess what was happening behind the frosted windows. But the energy was electric, the kind of drama that fuels endless comment threads and late-night debates. Kirk ran a hand over his face, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. "I messed up," he admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not what you think. I never meant for any of this to happen." Rasheeda's arms crossed tightly over her chest, her body language a fortress of pain and defiance. "Then tell me what I'm supposed to think," she demanded, her voice steady now, each word measured like a verdict. The room fell silent, everyone holding their breath for a confession that never fully came. Kirk's eyes darted to the floor, to the door, anywhere but Rasheeda's piercing stare. And for a brief moment, it seemed he might bolt, flee the house and the crowd outside. But he stayed, rooted in the mess he had made, the weight of 1,000 unsent messages pressing down on him. The night stretched on, every second heavy with the possibility of an ending neither of them wanted to name. Kirk stayed frozen in the center of the living room as the storm outside grew louder. Fans shouting questions into the night while camera crews whispered frantic updates into their earpieces. The front door rattled once, then again, as more cast members arrived, their faces lit by the glow of flashing phones. Rasheeda stood near the staircase, arms folded tight across her chest, her diamond bracelet catching the light as if mocking the tension in the room. "You can't talk your way out of this one," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the hum of producers shuffling behind the scenes. Kirk inhaled deeply, fighting to steady his shaking hands. "I swear to you, Rasheeda, it wasn't like that," he said, stepping forward. "It was a business dinner. She misread things. That's it." Rasheeda let out a bitter laugh that carried to the hallway. "Business dinners don't happen at 2 a.m., with hearts and winks in the messages," she snapped, pulling her phone from her pocket and flashing the screen toward him. The crowd of friends and cast members leaned in slightly, curiosity pulling them closer despite the thick tension. Carly Red gasped loud enough for everyone to hear. "Kirk, those emojis don't look like business," she said, shaking her head with exaggerated disbelief. Yandi tried to calm the room, placing a hand on Rasheeda's shoulder. But the moment she did, Rasheeda stepped back, eyes flashing. "Don't. This is between me and him," she warned, the weight of her words making Yandi retreat. Outside, a car door slammed and a sudden cheer rose from the street as word spread that Jasmine Washington, the woman at the center of Kirk's old scandal, had been spotted pulling up in an SUV. Phones shot higher, the night air crackling with excitement as fans screamed her name. Inside, Kirk's eyes widened in panic. No, she wouldn't," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But before he could move, the front door opened and Jasmine stepped in, her heels clicking against the polished floor like the sound of a countdown. The room erupted in gasps, everyone scrambling for position as if the night's drama had suddenly been given a second act. Jasmine's expression was unreadable as she walked straight toward Rasheeda, her confidence a weapon in itself. "Before you start pointing fingers," she said, her voice calm but laced with defiance, "I came here to clear my name." Rasheeda tilted her head, a cold smile creeping across her lips. "Clear your name? You showing up at my house in the middle of the night doesn't exactly scream innocent." Jasmine glanced at Kirk, her eyes narrowing. "Tell her, Kirk," she demanded. "Tell her it wasn't me." Kirk's throat tightened as every eye turned toward him, the pressure of the moment squeezing the breath from his chest. "It's not Jasmine," he said finally, his voice breaking. This is someone else." The room fell into stunned silence, the revelation slicing through the air like a blade. Rasheeda's eyes widened, her fury momentarily replaced by confusion. "Someone else," she repeated, her voice trembling with both rage and disbelief. "You mean there's another woman?" Kirk raised his hands as if trying to shield himself from the verbal blow. "It's not what you think. I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong person." Rasheeda stepped closer, her voice rising with every word. "Trusted? You betrayed me again, Kirk. Do you know what this does to our family? To our kids?" Tears glistened in her eyes, but her posture remained unyielding, every inch the queen she had always been. Jasmine, sensing the danger of the moment, took a cautious step back, her earlier confidence fading as the room's energy turned volatile. Carly whispered something to Yandi, but neither dared to move. The crowd outside roared louder, their chants of Rasheeda's name seeping through the walls like a rallying cry. Kirk's mind raced for words, for some explanation that could pull him out of the quicksand of his own making. "It wasn't an affair," he said, his voice breaking again. "It was someone trying to set me up. She wanted money. She threatened to leak things if I didn't pay." Rasheeda stared at him, her breathing heavy, her silence more dangerous than any scream. "So now you're the victim," she finally said, her voice icy. "Do you have proof of this setup? Or is this just another story to keep me from walking out that door?" Kirk reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone with trembling fingers. "I saved the messages," he said, unlocking the screen. "I can show you everything. Just give me a chance." But before he could hand her the phone, another knock rattled the door, sharp and urgent. Everyone turned as a new figure stepped inside, a young woman none of them recognized, her face partially hidden by a hood. The room froze as she pulled the hood back, revealing striking features and eyes that burned with a mix of anger and triumph. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "I'm the one you're all looking for." Gasps filled the room once again as she stepped closer, holding up her own phone like a piece of evidence. "Kirk Frost knows exactly who I am," she declared, "and he knows why I'm here." Rasheeda's hands clenched at her sides, her mind racing to keep up with the sudden twist. Kirk's face drained of color, his eyes locked on the woman as if he were staring at a ghost from a past he thought he had buried. "Maya," he whispered, the name slipping out before he could stop it. The woman smirked, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chaos she had unleashed. "That's right," she said. "It's time everyone heard what you've been hiding." The room erupted in shouts and questions, but Rasheeda's voice cut through the noise like a siren. "Everybody out," she ordered, her command silencing the chaos. One by one, friends and producers backed toward the door, their curiosity barely contained as they slipped outside to join the waiting crowd. Within moments, only Kirk, Rasheeda, and the mysterious woman remained, the air inside the house heavy with the weight of secrets finally clawing their way into the light. The door clicked shut behind the last producer, leaving a heavy silence that seemed to swallow the entire house. Rasheeda stood perfectly still, her arms folded like armor as her eyes flicked between Kirk and the stranger who had just shattered what little control remained. Maya took a slow step forward, the quiet confidence in her movements only fueling the tension. "You've been pretending for months," she said, her voice steady, each word striking like a hammer, telling me one thing while standing by her side on TV like nothing was happening. "Tonight, I'm done playing your game, Kirk." Kirk's jaw tightened, his hands twitching as if he were fighting the urge to reach for something to hold onto. "Maya, don't do this," he said, his voice low and pleading. "You don't know what you're walking into." Rasheeda's sharp laugh sliced through his words. "Oh, she knows exactly what she's walking into," she said. "It's you who doesn't know where this is about to go." Maya locked eyes with Rasheeda, her gaze unwavering. "I didn't come here to hurt you," she said, softening for a brief moment. "I came here because he made promises he never intended to keep. I won't be another one of his secrets." Rasheeda tilted her head, her voice cold but laced with curiosity. "Promises? What kind of promises?" Maya hesitated only long enough to draw a breath before answering. "He told me he was leaving, that your marriage was over. He said he just needed time to make it look clean for the cameras." Rasheeda's eyes snapped to Kirk, fury flashing like lightning. "You said, what?" she demanded, her voice rising. Kirk threw his hands up defensively. "It wasn't like that. I never said I was leaving you. Maya, you're twisting this." Maya's expression hardened, and she pulled her phone from her pocket with a swift motion. "Twisting? Then explain these messages." She shot back, unlocking her screen and thrusting it toward Rasheeda. The glow revealed a series of late-night texts, intimate words, whispered plans, and promises of a future that Kirk could no longer deny. Rasheeda scanned the messages, her face unreadable at first, then slowly shifting from disbelief to a cold, focused rage. "You lied to me," she said quietly, her voice trembling, not with weakness but with the sheer force of contained emotion. "All those nights you said you were working late, all those times you told me I was imagining things. You were feeding someone else the words you used to keep me here." Kirk stepped forward, desperation breaking through his carefully constructed calm. "It was a mistake," he said quickly. "I was confused. I said things I didn't mean because I was trying to keep her quiet." Maya's eyes widened with sudden anger. "Keep me quiet? You think I'm some random side piece you can buy off with sweet talk and empty promises?" Her voice cracked as she held up the phone again. "You said you loved me, Kirk. You said we had a future." Rasheeda's breath caught, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of the staircase for balance. "You told her you loved her?" she asked, her tone deadly calm. Kirk's lips parted, but no sound came. The silence that followed was more damning than any confession. Maya turned toward Rasheeda, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm not proud of this," she said softly, "but I'm not going to be hidden anymore. He made me believe he was done with you. I thought I was helping him escape a bad marriage. I didn't know he was lying to both of us." Rasheeda exhaled sharply, the sound cutting through the charged air. "Escape a bad marriage," she repeated. "That's what he told you." Maya nodded, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of the night was finally sinking in. "Yes. He said you two were just business now. That it was all for the cameras and the brand." Rasheeda's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Business," she said. "My marriage isn't a brand. It's my life." Kirk tried to speak, but Rasheeda's raised hands stopped him cold. "You've humiliated me on national television before, Kirk. You swore it would never happen again, and here we are." Maya wiped a tear from her cheek, her voice breaking. "I didn't come here to hurt you, Rasheeda. I just couldn't keep pretending." For a long tense moment, no one spoke. The distant shouts of fans outside felt muffled, like an echo from another world. Rasheeda finally turned to Kirk, her eyes blazing with a mix of pain and resolve. "Do you understand what you've done?" she asked quietly. Kirk swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "I never wanted this. I messed up. I thought I could fix it before it got this far." Rasheeda took a deliberate step toward him, her presence commanding the space. "Fix it," she said, each word sharp enough to cut. "You don't fix betrayal with lies. You don't fix a marriage by turning it into a business deal while you build a fantasy with someone else." Maya's voice softened again, her earlier anger replaced with a weary sadness. "I just wanted the truth," she said. "And now we all have it." The room fell silent once more, the weight of their collective pain pressing down like a storm about to break. Outside, the crowd grew restless, chanting Rasheeda's name louder, their voices carrying through the night like a drumbeat demanding justice. Rasheeda straightened her shoulders, her decision forming behind her steady gaze. "You need to leave," she said to Maya, her tone firm but not cruel. "This isn't your fight anymore." Maya hesitated, looking between them one last time before nodding. "I'm sorry," she whispered, then turned and walked out, the door closing with a finality that echoed through the tense space. The moment she was gone, Rasheeda turned back to Kirk, her eyes sharp as blades. "You've got one chance to tell me everything," she said. "No more excuses. No more lies. If you hold back even one detail, we're done. For good." Kirk nodded slowly, the full gravity of the ultimatum sinking in. He drew a shaky breath, ready to unearth the secrets that had brought them all to this breaking point as the night outside raged on, hungry for every twist their unraveling lives could offer. Kirk drew in a shaky breath, the kind that rattled like loose glass in a window frame. His eyes searched the floor for words, but there was nowhere left to hide. "It started months ago," he said at last, his voice low enough that Rasheeda had to lean in to catch each syllable. "I met Maya at a music showcase. We talked business distribution deals, studio sessions. At first, that was all it was." He paused, rubbing his palms together until they burned. "Then she started sending messages late at night. I should have shut it down, but I didn't. I thought I could handle it. I thought it meant nothing." Rasheeda's eyes never left his face. "But you told her you loved her," she said, her tone flat, almost clinical, like a surgeon preparing for the next incision. Kirk winced. "I said things I didn't mean because I was scared she'd go public. She knew about my past, about Jasmine. She threatened to ruin us if I didn't give her attention. I tried to keep the peace." Rasheeda's jaw tightened, the slightest twitch betraying the storm beneath her calm exterior. "Peace," she repeated. "You call lying to your wife peace?" Kirk stepped forward, desperation creeping back into his voice. "I was protecting you, protecting our kids. I didn't want another headline, another scandal tearing us apart." Rasheeda took a slow breath, the sound of it louder than the faint cheers still rising from outside. "Protecting me would have meant telling me the truth the first night she messaged you," she said. "Protecting our kids would have meant respecting their mother enough to stay faithful." Kirk's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from his body. "You're right," he whispered. "I failed you. I failed them. I hate myself for it." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the faint buzz of a producer's phone vibrating in the hallway. Rasheeda turned away, staring at the family photos lining the wall, smiling faces frozen in happier times. Her voice softened but did not waver. "Do you even know what it's like to stand in front of the world and defend a man who keeps giving it reasons to laugh at me?" she asked. "To build a brand, a marriage, a family, and watch you gamble it all because you can't set a boundary." Kirk moved closer, stopping just behind her. "I know I don't deserve another chance," he said, his voice trembling, "but I'm begging you for one. I'll go to counseling. I'll cut off every contact. I'll sign whatever you want. Just, please don't give up on me. Rasheeda turned slowly, her eyes glistening but fierce. Begging doesn't erase betrayal, she said. I've given you second chances before. Why should this time be any different? Before Kirk could answer, a sudden thud echoed from the front porch, followed by the unmistakable sound of chanting fans getting louder. Through the window, flashing lights illuminated the night as more people gathered, their voices rising in a chorus of Rasheeda's name. The scene outside looked like a street rally, with camera flashes exploding against the dark sky. Yandi slipped back inside, whispering urgently, "TMZ is outside. They know something big went down. We can't keep this quiet." Rasheeda barely glanced her way. "Let them wait," she said coolly. "This is my house, my family. They can shout all they want." Kirk ran a hand over his face, panic flickering in his eyes. "If this leaks before we explain it, it'll destroy everything," he said. Rasheeda turned on him sharply. "You already destroyed everything," she replied. "The cameras just caught the aftermath." Yandi hesitated in the doorway. "Rasheeda, we need to decide, do we send a statement, or let the silence speak?" Rasheeda looked back at Kirk, her decision written in the icy calm of her posture. "Silence," she said. "Let them wonder. Let him sweat." She stepped closer to Kirk, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You wanted to play with fire. Now feel the burn." Kirk swallowed hard, the roar of the crowd outside mixing with the pounding of his own heart. He knew this was no longer just a marriage in crisis. This was a public reckoning. And every second he hesitated gave the world more fuel for the flames. Kirk's voice cracked as he tried to speak. The low hum of the restaurant filled the silence, but to Rasheeda it felt as if the whole world had gone still. Her eyes locked on his, cold and unblinking. "Say it," she demanded, her tone sharp enough to cut through the clinking of glasses around them. Kirk swallowed hard and finally let the words escape. "I messed up. Again," he admitted, each syllable dragging out like a punishment. "It wasn't just business meetings in Miami. Jasmine was there. We talked. It went further than it ever should have." The table between them became a wall of betrayal. Rasheeda's chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths as she fought to keep her composure. "Further," she repeated, her voice low but trembling with restrained fury. Kirk nodded, eyes fixed on the table. "I didn't sleep with her, but with her was touching. There was drinking, and I let it happen. I let it get messy." Around them, waiters tried to pretend they weren't listening, but even strangers could feel the crackling tension. Rasheeda leaned back, her chair creaking under the weight of her anger. "You flew across the country to play house with the woman who tore our family apart," she said, her voice finally rising. "Do you understand how stupid that sounds?" Kirk flinched at the sharpness in her tone, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. "I know. I thought I was in control. But I wasn't. I wanted to prove I could handle being around her without making mistakes. And instead, I created another one." Rasheeda's hands gripped the edge of the table. "You wanted to prove something. To who? To her? To yourself? Because it sure wasn't for us." Kirk shook his head quickly. "It was for me. To convince myself I wasn't the same man I used to be, but I am, at least a part of me is. I keep thinking I've changed, and then I fall back into the same trap." His honesty only deepened the ache in Rasheeda's chest. She had heard variations of this speech before, and each time it chipped away at the hope she carried like a fragile glass ornament. "Do you ever think about what this does to me?" she asked, her voice breaking for the first time. "About what it does to our kids. Every time you even speak to her, it's like ripping open a wound that barely healed." Kirk reached across the table, but Rasheeda pulled her hands back before he could touch her. "I think about it every day," he said softly, "and I hate myself for it, but I can't erase what I've done. I can only tell you the truth now and pray you can forgive me." The word forgive hung between them like a bitter challenge. Rasheeda stared at him, her eyes glassy but still sharp. "Forgive, Kirk. You don't get to keep breaking something and then ask me to glue it back together. That's not forgiveness. That's torture." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment her strength faltered. Kirk's own eyes welled, but he blinked the tears back. "I know I don't deserve it," he said. "I'm not asking for a free pass. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can finally be the man you and the kids need." Rasheeda let out a bitter laugh. "A chance? How many chances have you already had? Do you even know?" Kirk opened his mouth but closed it again, unable to answer. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument they had ever had. Outside the restaurant window, the city lights flickered against the dark sky, indifferent to the storm unfolding inside. Rasheeda finally spoke, her tone quieter but far more dangerous. "If you think one more apology is enough, you don't know me anymore." I'm not the woman who waits for you to grow up. I built my own life, my own career, my own empire. With or without you, I stand. Her words struck Kirk like a physical blow. He nodded slowly, acknowledging a truth he could no longer deny. I know, he whispered, and that's why I'm terrified. Because I can feel you slipping away, and I don't want to lose the best thing that's ever happened to me? Rasheeda's eyes softened for a fleeting second, but she quickly hardened her expression again. Then stop acting like you already have, she said. The waiter arrived with their meals, but neither of them touched the plates. The food sat between them, cooling. As they faced the wreckage of a love story that had survived more than most but might finally be reaching its breaking point, Rasheeda stared at the untouched plates until the steam faded and the food went cold. The clatter of silverware around them sounded distant, like echoes from another world. Inside her chest, the anger that had once burned like fire cooled into something harder and sharper. I can't keep doing this, she said at last, her voice steady but stripped of warmth. Kirk leaned forward as if he could pull her words back into her mouth. Please don't say that, he whispered, but Rasheeda raised a hand to stop him. No, you need to hear it. You keep confessing after the damage is done, and I keep patching up the pieces. But each time, the cracks get deeper, and one day, there won't be anything left to fix. Kirk's throat tightened as he tried to speak. I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything. Therapy again. Complete transparency. Whatever you need. Rasheeda shook her head slowly. This isn't about what you'll do after the fact. It's about who you are when no one is watching. And right now, I don't recognize that man. Her words hung in the air like a sentence. Kirk reached for her hand again, and this time she let him, but the connection felt hollow. Like a gesture performed out of habit, rather than love. I'm still the man who loves you, he said, his voice cracking under the weight of desperation. I've made terrible choices, but my heart hasn't changed. Rasheeda looked down at their joined hands. Love isn't enough if respect keeps dying, she replied. I built this marriage on the belief that we could grow past the mistakes. But growth doesn't mean circling the same pain over and over. A tear slid down her cheek, but she brushed it away before it could fall. I need to think about what's next for me, for the kids, for everything we've built. And I can't do that sitting here pretending this meal means anything. Slowly, she withdrew her hand from his. Kirk's eyes followed the movement like a man watching a lifeline slip away. So what are you saying? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rasheeda pushed her chair back, the scrape of metal against tile cutting through the soft music. I'm saying I'm going home. Alone. And you can stay here and finish this dinner with the man you need to face most. She stood, her posture regal even in heartbreak. Heads turned as she walked toward the door, her heels clicking against the polished floor in a rhythm that sounded like finality. Kirk remained seated, frozen in a fog of regret. He wanted to chase her, to fall at her feet, to promise again and again. But something in her voice told him that chasing would only deepen the wound. Instead, he sat back, staring at the untouched meal as the reality of his choices closed in like a tightening vice. Outside, Rasheeda stepped into the cool night air and drew a long, shuddering breath. The city lights reflected in her eyes, but inside she felt only darkness and a hard-earned clarity. She thought of their children, of the empire she had built brick by brick, of the countless nights she had stood by a man who seemed determined to test the limits of loyalty. And for the first time in years, she let herself imagine a future where her happiness was not tied to Kirk's redemption. Back inside, Kirk finally rose from the table and left cash for the bill, his movements slow and heavy. Each step toward the door felt like walking through mud. Every memory of their life together flashing in cruel fragments: the first studio session, the wedding vows, the nights of laughter that once seemed unbreakable. When he reached the sidewalk, Rasheeda was already gone, swallowed by the city's restless energy. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over her name, but he couldn't bring himself to call. What words could bridge a distance that years of betrayal had carved? Somewhere across town, Jasmine scrolled through her messages, her own stomach in knots. She hadn't expected Kirk to confess anything tonight. She had played her part in the chaos, testing boundaries with texts and late-night calls. But even she hadn't foreseen the quiet explosion now rippling through Kirk's marriage. For a fleeting moment, guilt flickered across her face as she stared at the glowing screen. She knew Rasheeda didn't deserve this. Yet a part of her still held on to the thrill of being the woman who could pull a man like Kirk back into temptation. But as the night stretched on, even Jasmine felt the weight of what she had helped create. The game no longer felt exciting. It felt poisonous. And in the silent spaces between her thoughts, she wondered if Kirk would ever forgive himself, or if Rasheeda would finally close the door for good. Rasheeda's heels echoed against the quiet streets as she made her way home, each step feeling heavier than the last. The night air was sharp, cold, and unforgiving. And she welcomed it as a kind of baptism, a cleansing from the storm of lies and betrayals she had just walked through. Her mind replayed Kirk's words, Maya's revelations, the unreadable texts, and the quiet confessions that had finally spilled into the open. She knew one thing with absolute clarity: nothing would ever be the same. When she entered her house, the silence was almost suffocating. The kids were asleep upstairs, unaware of the chaos their parents had been navigating mere blocks away. Rasheeda sank onto the edge of the sofa, her heels still on, her fingers gripping the cushions as though holding on to herself was the only thing keeping the world from falling apart. A storm of emotions crashed over her: anger, betrayal, sorrow, and, strangely, a flicker of relief. Relief that the lies could no longer hide in the dark corners of the night. Relief that the truth was out, raw and jagged, even if it threatened to destroy what she had built. Her phone buzzed, breaking the quiet. It was a text from Yandi. "You okay? Do you need me to come over?" Rasheeda stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. She wanted to scream, to hurl the phone across the room, but instead she typed back simply, "I'll be fine." She didn't need a witness to her pain. She needed space, a fortress of her own thoughts where the night could stretch and the consequences could settle. Upstairs, she imagined Kirk pacing the apartment. He would soon return to the place that used to feel like home but now smelled of guilt and unanswered questions. She pictured his face, pale and drawn, haunted by Maya's arrival and the weight of her silent judgment. She pictured his hands shaking as he tried to reconcile the man he wanted to be with the man he had shown himself to be. And through it all, she realized the cruelest truth. He wasn't the only one who had been tested tonight. She had been tested too, and the strength she had worn like armor for years had never been more necessary. Rasheeda's mind raced, remembering every whispered lie, every casual dismissal of her suspicions, every time he had promised the world and delivered secrets instead. The memories twisted together into a tapestry of pain and anger, and she let herself feel every ounce of it, refusing to soften for him, for Maya, or for anyone else. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered what the fans outside were saying, what the cameras had captured, and whether the world now saw her as the wronged woman or as someone who had finally begun to crack. She felt the weight of every eye that had ever followed their lives, every comment that had praised her loyalty, every rumor that had painted her as controlling or jealous. They had all watched, but none had truly seen. Rasheeda's phone buzzed again, this time. A message from Kirk. "Please, I'll do anything. I need you. I love you." Her thumb hovered over the screen, and she felt a storm of temptation mixed with disgust. Part of her wanted to respond, to open the door a crack for him, but another, larger part of her knew that words could not undo the recklessness of his actions. The kids' laughter from previous mornings, the family moments that had been genuine and unbroken, flashed through her mind. She thought of how easily those moments had been threatened, how fragile trust truly was. Rasheeda realized that forgiving him would be an uphill battle. One that required more than pleading, more than promises. It required change that she wasn't sure he could sustain. She put the phone down and let out a long, shuddering breath, the tension leaving her in slow waves. In the silence of her living room, Rasheeda finally allowed herself to cry. Not loud, not desperate, but soft and controlled. Each tear, a release of the fury and grief she had bottled up. And as the tears slid down her cheeks, she felt a strange clarity. She would survive this. She would protect her children, her life, her empire. And Kirk. He would have to face the consequences of the man he chose to be. Hours passed like this. The city outside hummed with energy, but Rasheeda sat still, the weight of the night pressing into her bones. She thought of Maya, her unexpected arrival, her words that had opened doors of revelation, her presence that had forced truths into the open. Rasheeda felt a flicker of empathy toward the young woman who had been manipulated into complicity, but it was fleeting. The night belonged to her now. The choices belonged to her. And no one else's drama could override her own sense of justice. Eventually, she rose from the sofa, shedding her heels and moving toward the window. The street below was nearly empty, save for the lingering figures of fans and cameras. Their shouts had faded, leaving behind a quiet reminder that the world was always watching, always judging. Rasheeda pressed her palm against the glass, as if trying to push away the remnants of the night. And in that moment, she made a decision. She would not rush into forgiveness. She would not allow Kirk's words, his pleas, or his guilt to sway her judgment. She would move carefully, strategically, and with the full awareness that the next steps would define the rest of their lives. Upstairs, she imagined the children waking to a new reality, a home altered by the night's revelations. She vowed silently to shield them as best she could, to teach them strength through example, and to ensure that no betrayal, no matter how charismatic the culprit, could undermine the stability she had fought so hard to maintain. Rasheeda sank back into the sofa, closing her eyes. The night had been long, the revelations had been painful, the future was uncertain, but for the first time in hours, she felt in control of something again. Her own choices, her own destiny, and her own power to shape the path ahead. Kirk returned to his apartment in a daze, the city lights bleeding into his eyes through the wide windows. Every step across the hardwood floor felt heavier than the last, as if the air itself had thickened to match the weight in his chest. He dropped his keys onto the counter, barely registering the clatter, and sank into the leather sofa, head in his hands. The images of Rasheeda's eyes, the fury, the disappointment, the heartbreak flashed through his mind like a cruel slideshow. The echo of Maya's messages and the secrets he had kept pressed against his skull, making it impossible to breathe freely. He didn't know where to begin to fix what had been broken, and even the thought of attempting it felt like stepping into a storm that could swallow him whole. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if it might provide an answer he had long avoided. "What have I done?" The question repeated, over and over, like a drumbeat he could not silence. His phone buzzed on the table, another text from Rasheeda. He flinched, his thumb hovering over the screen. "I need space. I'll call when I'm ready." He exhaled sharply, the single sentence hitting him harder than anything anyone had ever said. The apartment was silent now, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint traffic below. Kirk ran a hand through his hair, pacing, circling the room like a caged animal. Every memory he had of his marriage, the laughter, the family dinners, the quiet nights spent together felt fragile, like it could shatter at the slightest touch. He thought about the empire they had built, the public image, the life they had shared. And then he thought of Maya, the chaos, the betrayal, the thrill that had tempted him into self-destruction. He sank to the sofa again, head falling onto the cushions. "What am I supposed to do now?" he whispered, the words carrying no hope, only despair. He thought about reaching out to friends, to family, to anyone who could offer advice. But he knew that no one could understand the maze he had built for himself. Every confession, every apology, every promise felt hollow in the absence of action. He needed to make it retour at least. He needed to try. But what could he do that wouldn't push Rasheeda further away? He picked up his phone, staring at the blank screen as if it held the secrets to salvation. He considered sending a long, heartfelt message, spelling out every regret, every memory, every ounce of love and desperation. But he knew words were only temporary patches on wounds that ran too deep. Instead, he opened his laptop and began drafting a plan. A step-by-step strategy to reclaim even a fraction of what he had destroyed. It was desperate, messy, and almost certainly inadequate, but it was action. He listed counseling sessions, family meetings, and public statements. He rehearsed apologies in his head, trying different tones, different phrasings, trying to hit the perfect balance between accountability and vulnerability. Hours passed like minutes as he typed and erased again, the glowing screen illuminating a face etched with regret and panic. At one point, he paused and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as though it could offer guidance. He wondered if Rasheeda's silence was a form of mercy or punishment, and whether the love that had once held them together could survive the magnitude of his mistakes. He thought of the fans, the cameras, the relentless public eye that had magnified every misstep, every whispered secret, every scandal, and he realized that even if Rasheeda could forgive him, the world might never let him forget. Exhaustion finally overtook him, and he leaned forward onto the desk, head resting on folded arms. Sleep was elusive, a distant concept, as his mind replayed the night's confessions and confrontations. Every moment with Rasheeda, every glance, every word, seemed to demand reckoning. He had begged, pleaded, and confessed, but he knew that the real work, the work that mattered, was just beginning. Dawn would come, and with it, the glare of reality. Kirk would have to face not just his own guilt, but the world's judgment, Rasheeda's decision, and the consequences of his choices. He drifted into a restless doze, the laptop still open, the draft of plans unfinished, and the weight of his mistakes pressing him into the cushions like chains. Somewhere far away, Rasheeda was waking, and the quiet strength she had wielded the night before remained her shield. Kirk understood, deep in the haze of sleeplessness, that nothing he did now could erase the past, only attempt to navigate the jagged path ahead and hope that she, and perhaps even he, could survive the storm that raged around them both. The news of Kirk Frost's confession spread like wildfire, igniting a frenzy across social media, fan forums, and every entertainment news outlet in the country. Within hours, hashtags accusing him of betrayal trended worldwide. while fans flooded Rasheeda's official pages with messages of support and outrage. The family was left divided in the court of public opinion, with some defending Kirk, citing human error and vulnerability, while others condemned him as unfaithful, reckless, and unworthy of the love he had once commanded. The comments sections overflowed with heated arguments, screenshots of old text messages, and wild speculation about the timeline of the alleged affair. Every celebrity gossip outlet jumped on the story, producing live streams, reaction videos, and breaking news alerts that pounded relentlessly, ensuring that neither Rasheeda nor Kirk could escape the glare of public scrutiny. Fans were shocked by the raw, unfiltered nature of Kirk's admissions, some expressing empathy for the man they had long admired, while others found themselves questioning the authenticity of his character entirely. Meanwhile, Rasheeda, ever the composed and strategic figure, maintained her silence publicly, letting the storm rage without her intervention. Her fans, loyal and fervent, rallied behind her, praising her for standing strong, refusing to react emotionally, and letting her dignity speak louder than any words ever could. The tension within her inner circle grew, as friends and family debated the best course of action. Some urged her to issue a statement, to set the record straight and control the narrative, while others counseled patience, arguing that silence was the sharpest blade in the age of social media chaos. Rasheeda, however, was unyielding. She knew that any misstep, any hurried response, could turn sympathy into criticism, and she would not allow the narrative of her own suffering to be hijacked by the very man who had betrayed her. As news outlets dissected every word of Kirk's confession, snippets of his conversation with Rasheeda were leaked online, creating endless threads of speculation. The clips were short, but they captured the emotional rawness, his desperation, his trembling voice, his pleading eyes, all juxtaposed with Rasheeda's icy resolve and measured responses. Fans debated endlessly over every facial expression, every pause, every hesitation, analyzing the micro-expressions that revealed heartbreak, regret, and perhaps even the faintest glimmer of insincerity. Meanwhile, in the city streets outside their homes, paparazzi camped in anticipation, and die-hard fans gathered, shouting for glimpses, posting live streams and broadcasting their own takes in real time. The energy was almost electric, a chaotic mix of loyalty, judgment, and voyeurism that magnified the private pain into a public spectacle. Kirk, aware of the growing storm, oscillated between desperation and careful calculation. He scrolled endlessly through social media feeds, tracking the tides of public sentiment, agonizing over every comment, every meme, every judgment passed in his absence. The pressure was immense, a suffocating weight that pushed him toward both self-destruction and frantic attempts at redemption. He drafted letters and statements, deleted them, and started again, caught in the endless loop of trying to control a narrative that had already slipped entirely from his grasp. Rasheeda, watching all this unfold from her own carefully maintained privacy, felt a strange combination of vindication and sorrow. She had long understood that public opinion could be a weapon, but also a prison. Every tweet praising her resilience carried the hidden sting of the invasion into her personal life. Every supportive comment a reminder that her pain was now a performance for millions. And yet, she refused to give the audience the satisfaction of seeing her unravel. Instead, she focused on the family, spending quiet evenings with the kids, holding them close, and reinforcing the sense of stability that Kirk's indiscretions had threatened to destroy. Her social media posts were sparse, curated with precision smiles with the children, snapshots of daily life, subtle hints of strength without revealing the full scope of the chaos behind closed doors. In contrast, Kirk became a study in restless anxiety. Every notification triggered a flinch, every headline felt like a punch to the chest, and every comment, whether supportive or critical, amplified the enormity of his failure. He knew that Rasheeda's silence was strategic, that her decision to let the world witness the fallout without intervention only heightened the stakes. His attempts at outreach through friends, family, and intermediaries were met with cautious resistance. His own reputation, once carefully managed and protected, teetered on the edge of ruin, with every rumor threatening to undo decades of carefully cultivated public image. And then came the leaks. Photos of clandestine meetings, screenshots of messages sent in secrecy, recordings of private conversations, all released by unnamed sources, each one adding layers of humiliation and chaos. Fans were polarized, some excusing his behavior as human weakness, others condemning him as irredeemable. The narrative spiraled further when Kirk attempted to clarify his side in interviews, only to have his words edited, manipulated, or misinterpreted, fueling more debate and controversy. The tension between private reconciliation and public perception reached a fever pitch. Rasheeda's advisors recommended a formal statement, a controlled interview, perhaps even a televised discussion to assert authority over the story, but she hesitated. She recognized the danger of giving him a platform while still wounded and uncertain. Instead, she focused on building an aura of strength, demonstrating through action rather than speech that she would survive, with or without him. Fans and critics alike watched, captivated by the unfolding drama. Analyzing every nuance of behavior, every public appearance, every subtle interaction between the estranged couple, rumors flourished: who was supporting whom behind closed doors, which alliances were forming in their social circle, which secrets were yet to be revealed. Meanwhile, Kirk's own support system wavered. Friends who had once stood by him now questioned the wisdom of his actions, expressing frustration, disappointment, and fear for his personal well-being. Their admonitions, however well-meaning, only deepened his sense of isolation. His pleas for understanding seemed to fall on deaf ears, each failed attempt reinforcing the stark reality: he was alone, facing both the consequences of his betrayal and the judgment of a world that had grown hungry for scandal. And yet, despite the chaos, a small spark of determination remained. Kirk knew that redemption would not come easily. He understood the magnitude of the bridges he had burned and the trust he had shattered. Every sleepless night, every agonizing decision, every careful maneuver in the shadows was a testament to his unwillingness to let the story end without him fighting for a chance to reclaim what he had lost. Outside, Rasheeda continued to command attention without even trying. Every public appearance, every social media post, every interaction with fans and friends was measured, deliberate, and precise. Her poise contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding Kirk, reinforcing the narrative of her strength and resilience. And the public watched, captivated, arguing, taking sides, and speculating about the ultimate outcome of a story that seemed to have no end in sight. In this maelstrom of emotion, media scrutiny, and social judgment, both Kirk and Rasheeda were forced to confront the truths of their relationship, the consequences of their choices, and the fragile thread that still connected them despite the chaos. Each day became a battleground between private emotion and public performance, with every move scrutinized, every decision questioned, and every action magnified. The drama was far from over, and the fans, ravenous for updates, had no idea that the next chapter would bring even more shocking revelations, unexpected alliances, and heartbreaking confrontations. And somewhere in the midst of it all, Kirk and Rasheeda both understood that the path forward would demand not just forgiveness, but strategy, endurance, and the courage to face the world in all its relentless intensity. The morning sun streamed through Kirk's blinds, casting harsh lines across the room, but the light did nothing to illuminate the mess he felt inside. The night had been long, sleepless, and full of visions he couldn't shake: Rasheeda's disappointed stare, the weight of his own confessions, the ever-present threat of public humiliation. He sat at the edge of his bed, phone in hand, scrolling through endless social media threads that dissected every word of his admission. Fans were merciless, calling him names, making memes, debating whether he had truly changed or if his remorse was nothing more than a carefully staged performance. Comments accusing him of hypocrisy piled on top of each other, while others clung to any shred of humanity he had displayed, insisting that he could still redeem himself. His thumb hovered over the screen, poised to reply, to explain, to plead. But he knew that nothing he wrote could undo the flood of judgment that had already been unleashed. Even private messages from close friends and family carried cautionary tones, some encouraging him to take control, others scolding him for continuing to make poor choices that put his marriage and public image at risk. The pressure was suffocating. Kirk leaned back, rubbing his face with both hands, and thought about Rasheeda. She was quiet, strong, a pillar of resolve in a storm he had created. Her silence had become the loudest statement of all, a reminder that she didn't need him to define her, to validate her, or to protect her from the judgmental eyes of the world. The realization hit him harder than any public critique could. He had pushed the one person whose approval mattered most to the edge, and now he was left grasping at air, trying to find a foothold in a relationship that had already begun to fracture. Meanwhile, Rasheeda, in the cool refuge of her own home, continued to carefully navigate the fallout. She spent hours planning her next moves, balancing the needs of her children, the expectations of fans, and the necessity of maintaining control over a narrative that was spinning wildly out of her grasp. Every decision was deliberate, every public appearance was measured, every social media post curated, every interaction with the press calculated to convey strength without revealing vulnerability. Her advisors had urged her to confront Kirk publicly, to make him answer for his actions, but she knew that any misstep could turn the tide against her. She would not let her own pain be manipulated into spectacle. At the same time, whispers of new revelations began circulating, online rumors of secret meetings, unexpected alliances, and hidden messages that only intensified the chaos. Fans speculated endlessly, creating timelines, analyzing text threads, and scrutinizing photos for any sign of deception. The energy around the story was electric, almost feverish, and both Kirk and Rasheeda were caught in the center of a storm they had no control over. In his apartment, Kirk tried to formulate a plan. He considered reaching out to Rasheeda, writing a long, heartfelt letter, arranging a mediated conversation, but each option felt fraught with peril. One wrong word, one poorly timed message, could undo any progress he might hope to make. He knew that trust, once shattered, could not be reconstructed with apologies alone. Meanwhile, Rasheeda's circle of friends, family, and fans became her shield. They circulated stories defending her, supporting her decisions, and calling out Kirk's past behaviors. Some went further, digging up old interviews, highlighting inconsistencies, and emphasizing her resilience and independence. Social media became a battleground where loyalty, outrage, and speculation collided, and neither Kirk nor Rasheeda could step out from the crossfire without risking further scrutiny. The tension escalated as new images leaked, photos of late-night meetings, ambiguous text exchanges, and fleeting encounters that hinted at continued complications. Fans dissected every frame, analyzing body language, facial expressions, and even clothing choices for hidden meanings. Conspiracies flourished online. Some speculated about secret alliances, others about possible reconciliations, and a few suggested that yet another shocking betrayal was imminent. Kirk watched it all with a mixture of dread and fascination. He knew the narrative was spiraling beyond his control, and he was desperate to find a way to reclaim it before it destroyed not just his marriage, but the life he had worked tirelessly to build. The pressure became unbearable. He began drafting public statements, crafting apologies, scripting potential interviews, and preparing for any scenario that could arise. Each attempt seemed futile, as the public's attention shifted like sand in a storm, unpredictable and relentless. Yet, amidst the chaos, a faint spark of hope remained. Kirk understood that he could not erase the past, but he might influence the future if he acted decisively, strategically, and with unflinching honesty. Rasheeda, on the other hand, remained vigilant, aware that every move she made would be scrutinized, every word weighed, and every appearance analyzed. She navigated the delicate balance between privacy and public engagement with precision, ensuring that she maintained authority over the narrative without succumbing to the drama's emotional pull. The city around them buzzed with attention, the media frenzy growing, and the fans' engagement intensifying. Every outlet, every influencer, and every gossip account had a stake in the unfolding story. And both Kirk and Rasheeda were forced to play their parts carefully. The days stretched into weeks, and the tension between them became a silent undercurrent, influencing every interaction, every decision, and every moment of public visibility. Each party knew that the next revelation, the next leak, the next comment could shift the balance dramatically, and in that unrelenting pressure, the stage was set for consequences that would be both personal and public, intimate and explosive, a perfect storm that neither could fully anticipate but both would be forced to navigate. The city was alive with whispers, speculation, and the hum of gossip that seemed to pulse through every social feed and tabloid outlet as the Kirk-Rasheeda scandal reached heights no one could have anticipated. The news cycle spun faster than anyone could track, with each headline more sensational than the last, pushing the boundaries of public fascination and outrage. Fans were divided, emotions ran high, and every private detail spilled into the public domain, amplifying the drama beyond what even the couple had imagined. Kirk, sitting alone in his apartment, scrolled through countless posts, every notification a dagger to his conscience, every comment a mirror reflecting the destruction he had wrought. He replayed Rasheeda's voice, her quiet but devastating words, and the unyielding gaze that had cut through his excuses and confessions alike. His hands trembled as he typed out messages and deleted them, each one insufficient, inadequate, and incapable of bridging the gap that now separated him from the woman he loved. Meanwhile, Rasheeda moved like a calculated force of nature, balancing private grief with public poise. She knew every move she made would be dissected, every appearance magnified, and every silence interpreted, yet she used that scrutiny as armor, turning public attention into a shield against further emotional assault. Her social media became a subtle weapon, posts carefully crafted to display strength, moments with her children that conveyed stability, and a calm yet commanding presence that made clear she was not a woman to be manipulated or underestimated. Friends and family rallied around her, amplifying her message and subtly controlling the narrative, creating a buffer between her and the relentless waves of criticism and curiosity. Each day brought new revelations, photos leaked from private encounters, text messages shared by anonymous sources, and rumors that hinted at further infidelity, all feeding the media machine and creating a frenzy of speculation. Fans and followers dissected every nuance, analyzing body language, timing, and facial expressions, trying to uncover secrets hidden beneath the carefully curated public image. Kirk, acutely aware of the narrative spinning out of his control, felt a desperate need to act but struggled with the weight of his mistakes. He considered reaching out, arranging meetings, or issuing statements, but every option seemed fraught with peril. One wrong word, one poorly timed gesture, could destroy any remaining trust and send public opinion plummeting further against him. He spent hours rehearsing conversations in his head, imagining Rasheeda's responses, anticipating media interpretations, and planning contingency strategies, all while the gnawing fear of losing everything remained a constant companion. At the same time, Jasmine, observing from the sidelines, sensed an opportunity she hadn't expected. Her own messages, her involvement in the night of confessions, and the subtle provocations she had initiated suddenly placed her in a position of power she hadn't anticipated. She reached out to mutual friends and confidants, planting seeds of doubt and ensuring that the unfolding drama maintained a level of unpredictability that worked in her favor. Her careful maneuvering, while invisible to the public, added layers of complexity to the already convoluted narrative. And as the story escalated, the media intensified its coverage, with live interviews, round-the-clock updates, and exclusive insights that transformed private pain into public spectacle. Analysts speculated on the psychological impact, dissected every interaction, and created timelines that positioned Kirk as the central figure of betrayal, while Rasheeda emerged as the embodiment of resilience and dignity. The public debate raged. Some demanded accountability, others championed forgiveness, while a growing faction reveled in the sheer unpredictability of the saga. Kirk's every move was scrutinized. A casual social post, a delayed reply, or a single public appearance could ignite fresh waves of speculation, and the constant surveillance left him feeling trapped and exposed. Meanwhile, Rasheeda maintained an almost supernatural composure. Each smile, each gesture, each post seemed calculated not only to protect herself but also to maintain the illusion of control in a world spiraling with chaos. Behind the scenes, her advisors and inner circle worked tirelessly, coordinating responses, controlling leaks, and ensuring that any new information reinforced her narrative of strength. At the same time, Kirk's attempts at private reconciliation were met with cautious resistance. Rasheeda was unwilling to entertain meetings, calls, or mediated interventions that could compromise her position or her own emotional equilibrium. Every plea, every apology, every plan for redemption was filtered through her unyielding lens of self-preservation and judgment. And yet, despite the apparent hopelessness, Kirk refused to give up. Each sleepless night, each agonizing reflection, and each public critique fueled a desperate determination. He drafted letters, created elaborate scenarios for reconciling with Rasheeda, and mentally rehearsed conversations that might, if perfectly executed, allow him to reclaim a fraction of what he had lost. But even in these moments, the uncertainty was suffocating. And the threat of another scandal, another leak, another betrayal loomed constantly. Outside their personal spheres, the world continued to feed off the drama. Talk shows, podcasts, and social media influencers dissected every aspect, and fan accounts proliferated, some supporting Rasheeda, some siding with Kirk, and many simply reveling in the spectacle of two lives so publicly unraveled. Each new post, each viral clip, each whispered rumor added fuel to the fire, creating an unstoppable momentum that neither Kirk nor Rasheeda could control entirely. And amid this storm of attention and emotion, another unexpected twist emerged. A previously unknown figure, a former associate with ties to Kirk's inner circle, began to leak private communications and documents, throwing the entire narrative into new and unpredictable directions. The sudden influx of information forced both Kirk and Rasheeda to reassess strategies, consider new alliances, and navigate treacherous waters where any misstep could have devastating consequences. Emotions ran high, tempers flared, and private confrontations became inevitable, each encounter more volatile than the last, filled with accusations, confessions, and the raw, exposed pain of a relationship on the brink. And in the midst of it all, both Kirk and Rasheeda realized that their personal struggle had become a public obsession, each move dissected, judged, and replayed endlessly, leaving them with no sanctuary from the chaos that had engulfed their lives. The tension between Kirk and Rasheeda reached new heights as the days turned into nights filled with sleepless anxiety, clandestine phone calls, and the relentless churn of gossip and speculation that seemed to follow them like a shadow they could never shake. Kirk's apartment became a war room of frantic planning and obsessive tracking of public sentiment. With spreadsheets, drafts of statements, and social media screenshots scattered across the floor, every notification was a dagger, every headline a public execution, and every fan theory a reminder of the magnitude of his missteps. He replayed Rasheeda's gaze over and over, the piercing combination of disappointment, strength, and heartbreak that had cut through his defenses with surgical precision. He tried to imagine how he could repair the damage, what he could say or do that might begin to restore even a fraction of the trust he had destroyed. And yet, each plan felt like a gamble, each potential conversation a minefield of unpredictable reactions. Meanwhile, Rasheeda maintained a formidable presence both in private and in the public eye. Her carefully curated social media posts conveyed stability and control. Masking the whirlwind of emotions she managed behind closed doors, friends and family rallied to her side, creating a protective barrier against prying eyes and intrusive commentary. Her children were shielded from the worst of the scandal. Yet she knew that the ripples of betrayal had touched every corner of their lives. Publicly, she allowed the narrative to unfold without interference, understanding that silence in a world hungry for drama was itself a weapon, a way to maintain authority over the chaos that Kirk had unleashed. As the media frenzy intensified, every new leak became a catalyst for speculation. Photos of late-night meetings, partial transcripts of conversations, and mysterious text messages were circulated by anonymous sources, each revelation igniting fresh debates and polarizing fans further. Some criticized Kirk harshly, some defended him weakly, and others fixated on Rasheeda's composed response, turning her restraint into fodder for admiration and scrutiny alike. In this maelstrom, Kirk's sense of control disintegrated, replaced by a gnawing fear that every step he took would be met with resistance or misinterpretation. His efforts at private reconciliation were rebuffed. Rasheeda's silence and strategic distancing became an unspoken barrier, forcing him to confront not only the consequences of his actions but also the realization that forgiveness would not come easily, if at all. At the same time, unexpected players began to emerge from the shadows, adding layers of complication to an already combustible situation. Jasmine's involvement, subtle yet deliberate, created further tension. As she reached out to mutual acquaintances, sowed uncertainty, and ensured that the public's fascination with the drama remained at a fever pitch. Her maneuvers, though invisible to most, amplified the stakes, introducing unpredictability and forcing both Kirk and Rasheeda to navigate additional complexities while the world watched. The storm of public attention continued to swell. Talk shows dissected each move, podcasts speculated endlessly, and fan accounts multiplied, presenting narratives that were contradictory, sensationalized, and impossible to fully counter. The scrutiny was relentless, with every word spoken, every appearance made, and every gesture analyzed to death. Kirk, acutely aware of the dangers, oscillated between desperation and strategy, each day feeling like a test of endurance, wit, and emotional resilience. Rasheeda, conversely, remained the image of controlled authority, her poise and decisiveness creating a stark contrast to Kirk's spiraling anxiety. Her silence, which some interpreted as weakness, was in truth a calculated demonstration of power and self-preservation. Both were acutely aware that the stakes were no longer confined to their private lives. The public eye had become a force that dictated behavior, interpretation, and consequences. And yet, amid the chaos, personal confrontation became inevitable. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted in private encounters fraught with accusation, confession, and raw emotional exposure. Kirk's pleading, sometimes desperate, sometimes measured, collided with Rasheeda's icy determination to protect herself, her children, and the life she had built. Each conversation was a tightrope walk, a test of patience, strategy, and emotional control, where any misstep could result in irrevocable damage. Simultaneously, the city outside mirrored the drama unfolding in their private worlds. Paparazzi lurked, social media live feeds buzzed with speculation, and devoted fans stalked the narrative with obsessive attention. Every new post, every cryptic comment, and every subtle signal from either Kirk or Rasheeda was amplified exponentially, creating a cycle of tension, reaction, and further speculation. the emotional stakes continued to escalate. Kirk's desperation grew as he realized that public opinion was both relentless and merciless, that forgiveness would not be immediate, and that Rasheeda's steadfast resolve was as much a barrier as any legal or social constraint. Meanwhile, Rasheeda leveraged the public's fascination to assert authority, subtly shaping the narrative, without ever revealing the full scope of her private deliberations. And as the days wore on, both Kirk and Rasheeda understood that the unfolding drama had become more than a scandal. It had become a psychological battlefield, a contest of endurance, reputation, and emotional control. The introduction of additional leaks, confessions, and outside influences only heightened the stakes, creating an intricate web of tension, speculation, and anticipation. Each night brought sleepless hours, replayed arguments, imagined scenarios, and the gnawing sense that one misstep could undo all remaining trust. And yet, even in the midst of turmoil, both parties remained acutely aware of the faintest glimmers of hope, the possibility of resolution, and the chance, however, slim to reclaim a sense of normalcy or redemption. Even as the world watched with rapt attention, the tension between Kirk and Rasheeda reached a fever pitch as every day brought new surprises, betrayals, and revelations that threatened to destabilize what little equilibrium remained. Kirk, trapped in a whirlwind of self-recrimination, public scrutiny, and desperate attempts at reconciliation, felt the walls closing in. His apartment had transformed into a command center of chaos. Scattered notes, half-written apologies, meticulously planned social media statements, and endless screenshots of fan commentary covering every inch of his workspace. He tried to craft messages that balanced remorse with accountability, but each draft seemed inadequate, a mere shadow of the weight he carried. Rasheeda's presence haunted him even in her absence. Her piercing gaze, calm yet unyielding, echoed in his mind at all hours, a constant reminder of the pain he had inflicted. Every thought was a cycle of regret, fear, and longing, each moment reinforcing the consequences of his betrayal. Meanwhile, Rasheeda moved with calculated precision, ensuring that the public narrative worked in her favor while protecting herself and her children from the media frenzy. Every appearance was deliberate, a glance here, a gesture there, carefully curated posts that exuded strength and poise. Friends and family aligned around her, coordinating responses, filtering rumors, and creating a fortress of support that kept the chaos at bay. The world watched, mesmerized, as social media exploded with speculation, debate, and outrage. Leaks continued to surface, each one more explosive than the last. Photos from private encounters, cryptic text messages, and previously undisclosed conversations that fueled endless commentary. Fans dissected every detail, analyzing body language, timing, and even clothing choices for hidden meanings, transforming private pain into a global spectacle. Kirk, aware of how each new revelation shifted public opinion, struggled to maintain composure. He weighed every potential move, aware that one misstep could obliterate any chance of redemption. He rehearsed interactions, imagined scenarios, and even created contingency plans for potential media exposure. Yet, the pressure only seemed to compound, the fear of permanent humiliation gnawing at his every thought. Jasmine, sensing opportunity, began to exploit the unfolding chaos. Her subtle manipulations, carefully timed revelations, and strategic interactions with mutual friends added another layer of complexity to an already intricate drama. Her presence, though largely unseen by the public, influenced both Kirk and Rasheeda in ways neither had anticipated. As the media frenzy intensified, every interview, post, and public appearance was scrutinized, dissected, and debated across platforms. Talk shows, podcasts, and fan accounts fueled the fire, creating a sense of relentless exposure that neither Kirk nor Rasheeda could escape. Kirk's attempts at private reconciliation were met with measured resistance. Rasheeda's silence became both shield and sword, forcing him to confront the reality that forgiveness would not come easily, if at all. Meanwhile, Rasheeda leveraged public attention to assert dominance over the narrative, subtly reinforcing her resilience while keeping her vulnerabilities hidden. The emotional stakes escalated with every passing day. Each interaction between the couple was a psychological battleground, charged with accusation, confession, and raw, unfiltered emotion. Private confrontations, fraught with intensity, became inevitable. Kirk's desperate appeals collided with Rasheeda's calculated defenses, creating a volatile mix of tension, heartbreak, and unresolved anger. Outside their personal worlds, the city mirrored the frenzy. Paparazzi waited, social media buzzed, and fans hung on every update, each gesture, and each cryptic comment, amplifying the intensity of the scandal. The public, invested in every detail, became an unrelenting force that shaped both perception and reaction. Leaks, confessions, and new revelations only added to the chaos. Unknown sources began to emerge, introducing documents, images, and recordings that complicated the narrative further. Each development demanded careful navigation, with the threat of misinterpretation looming at every turn. Kirk's desperation deepened. Every sleepless night, every replayed argument, every imagined scenario underscored the precariousness of his situation. Rasheeda, conversely, maintained a composed exterior, strategically managing her interactions, controlling leaks, and ensuring that the narrative reflected her strength and resilience. The interplay of private struggle and public spectacle became a defining feature of the saga, with the emotional, psychological, and reputational stakes escalating in equal measure. Both Kirk and Rasheeda faced relentless pressure to navigate a complex labyrinth of relationships, expectations, and public judgment. Their lives, once private and personal, had transformed into a relentless performance under the scrutiny of millions. Every decision was amplified, every gesture dissected, and every silence interpreted, forcing them to balance emotion with strategy in a high-stakes game of perception and consequence. The intensity of the situation continued to escalate, revealing deeper fissures and vulnerabilities in both parties. Kirk's attempts at connection, reconciliation, and redemption collided with Rasheeda's firm boundaries and strategic poise, creating a tension that was palpable, relentless, and consuming. And amid it all, the public's fascination only grew, fueling the drama, amplifying the stakes, and ensuring that every next move would be scrutinized, analyzed, and debated with fervor. The tension between Kirk and Rasheeda reached a fever pitch as every day brought new surprises, betrayals, and revelations that threatened to destabilize what little equilibrium remained. Kirk, trapped in a whirlwind of self-recrimination, public scrutiny, and desperate attempts at reconciliation, felt the walls closing in. His apartment had transformed into a command center of chaos. Scattered notes, half-written apologies, meticulously planned social media statements, and endless screenshots of fan commentary covering every inch of his workspace. He tried to craft messages that balanced remorse with accountability, but each draft seemed inadequate, a mere shadow of the weight he carried. Rasheeda's presence haunted him even in her absence. Her piercing gaze, calm yet unyielding, echoed in his mind at all hours, a constant reminder of the pain he had inflicted. Every thought was a cycle of regret, fear, and longing, each moment reinforcing the consequences of his betrayal. Meanwhile, Rasheeda moved with calculated precision, ensuring that the public narrative worked in her favor while protecting herself and her children from the media frenzy. Every appearance was deliberate, a glance here, a gesture there, carefully curated posts that exuded strength and poise. Friends and family aligned around her, coordinating responses, filtering rumors, and creating a fortress of support that kept the chaos at bay. The world watched, mesmerized, as social media exploded with speculation, debate, and outrage. Leaks continued to surface, each one more explosive than the last. Photos from private encounters, cryptic text messages, and previously undisclosed conversations that fueled endless commentary. Fans dissected every detail, analyzing body language, timing, and even clothing choices for hidden meanings, transforming private pain into a global spectacle. Kirk, aware of how each new revelation shifted public opinion, struggled to maintain composure. He weighed every potential move, aware that one misstep could obliterate any chance of redemption. He rehearsed interactions, imagined scenarios, and even created contingency plans for potential media exposure. Yet, the pressure only seemed to compound, the fear of permanent humiliation gnawing at his every thought. Jasmine, sensing opportunity, began to exploit the unfolding chaos. Her subtle manipulations, carefully timed revelations, and strategic interactions with mutual friends added another layer of complexity to an already intricate drama. Her presence, though largely unseen by the public, influenced both Kirk and Rasheeda in ways neither had anticipated. As the media frenzy intensified, every interview, post, and public appearance was scrutinized, dissected, and debated across platforms. Talk shows, podcasts, and fan accounts fueled the fire, creating a sense of relentless exposure that neither Kirk nor Rasheeda could escape. Kirk's attempts at private reconciliation were met with measured resistance. Rasheeda's silence became both shield and sword, forcing him to confront the reality that forgiveness would not come easily, if at all. Meanwhile, Rasheeda leveraged public attention to assert dominance over the narrative, subtly reinforcing her resilience while keeping her vulnerabilities hidden. The emotional stakes escalated with every passing day. Each interaction between the couple was a psychological battleground, charged with accusation, confession, and raw, unfiltered emotion. Private confrontations, fraught with intensity, became inevitable. Kirk's desperate appeals collided with Rasheeda's calculated defenses, creating a volatile mix of tension, heartbreak, and unresolved anger. Outside their personal worlds, the city mirrored the frenzy. Paparazzi waited, social media buzzed, and fans hung on every update. Each gesture, and each cryptic comment, amplifying the intensity of the scandal. The public, invested in every detail, became an unrelenting force that shaped both perception and reaction. Leaks, confessions, and new revelations only added to the chaos. Unknown sources began to emerge, introducing documents, images, and recordings that complicated the narrative further. Each development demanded careful navigation, with the threat of misinterpretation looming at every turn. Kirk's desperation deepened. Every sleepless night, every replayed argument, every imagined scenario underscored the precariousness of his situation. Rasheeda, conversely, maintained a composed exterior, strategically managing her interactions, controlling leaks, and ensuring that the narrative reflected her strength and resilience. The interplay of private struggle and public spectacle became a defining feature of the saga, with the emotional, psychological, and reputational stakes escalating in equal measure. Both Kirk and Rasheeda faced relentless pressure to navigate a complex labyrinth of relationships, expectations, and public judgment. Their lives, once private and personal, had transformed into a relentless performance under the scrutiny of millions. Every decision was amplified, every gesture dissected, and every silence interpreted, forcing them to balance emotion with strategy in a high-stakes game of perception and consequence. The intensity of the situation continued to escalate, revealing deeper fissures and vulnerabilities in both parties. Kirk's attempts at connection, reconciliation, and redemption collided with Rasheeda's firm boundaries and strategic poise, creating a tension that was palpable, relentless, and consuming. And amid it all, the public's fascination only grew, fueling the drama, amplifying the stakes, and ensuring that every next move would be scrutinized, analyzed, and debated with fervor. The unfolding scandal reached a level of intensity that seemed almost impossible to contain, as each new day brought fresh revelations, leaks, and confrontations that left Kirk and Rasheeda both exhausted and on edge. Kirk, pacing endlessly in his apartment, felt the weight of every choice crushing him. The public scrutiny, relentless and unyielding. Social media notifications became a source of both fear and obsession, each one a reminder that the world was watching, judging, and speculating about his every move. Fans dissected his body language, analyzed his statements, and debated the sincerity of his remorse, creating a tidal wave of attention that refused to subside. He drafted statements, erased them, and started over, searching desperately for the right combination of words that might salvage some semblance of dignity or redemption. The internal conflict raged inside him: shame, regret, anxiety, and a longing for Rasheeda's forgiveness warred against the understanding that time, patience, and strategic action were his only real tools. Meanwhile, Rasheeda maintained a composed exterior, strategically shielding herself from the worst of the media storm while simultaneously asserting control over the narrative. Her social media posts, carefully curated, exuded strength, stability, and resilience, providing a counterbalance to the chaos generated by Kirk's desperate actions and the relentless public attention. Friends and family aligned around her, offering both emotional support and strategic guidance, ensuring that every leak, every rumor, and every public interaction reinforced the perception of her authority and self-possession. The public's fascination intensified as new pieces of the scandal emerged. Leaked text messages, anonymous tips, and partial video recordings fueled speculation, argument, and debate across fan forums and social media platforms. Some interpreted the leaks as evidence of Kirk's continuing duplicity, while others clung to signs of genuine remorse, arguing that his visible struggle was proof that he wanted to make amends. The complexity of the situation escalated further with the arrival of Jasmine's subtle interference. Her involvement, initially unnoticed, had now become a catalyst for chaos, introducing additional uncertainty and tension into the already volatile environment. She strategically shared selective information with insiders and friends, further complicating the dynamics between Kirk and Rasheeda and keeping the drama unpredictable. Media outlets seized on every new development, broadcasting live updates, dissecting conversations, and hosting endless debates about the authenticity of Kirk's apologies and Rasheeda's reactions. The frenzy reached a point where every social media post, every public appearance, and every interaction, however minor, was analyzed and interpreted as part of a broader narrative. Kirk's attempts at private reconciliation were met with careful resistance from Rasheeda. Her silence and measured responses served as a subtle but unmistakable barrier, forcing him to confront the enormity of the betrayal and the reality that forgiveness would not come easily. At the same time, the constant public scrutiny amplified emotional tension, creating a feedback loop in which private pain became spectacle and strategic silence became both weapon and shield. The intensity of private confrontations escalated, with every meeting charged with unspoken accusations, emotional tension, and the raw vulnerability of two people whose bond had been deeply tested. Kirk's desperation was palpable, his voice wavering, his words often breaking under the weight of regret and longing. Rasheeda, composed and strategic, responded with measured precision, asserting her boundaries and testing his sincerity, while simultaneously maintaining a calm exterior that reinforced her public image of strength and control. The emotional landscape was a battlefield where every word, glance, and gesture carried the potential to either mend or further destroy what remained of trust. Meanwhile, the surrounding world, the city, fans, media, and social commentators acted as a relentless force that magnified every misstep and amplified every tension. Paparazzi lingered, fan accounts dissected events, and gossip outlets churned out endless speculation, creating an environment in which privacy was impossible and strategy became paramount. Each revelation, each new piece of leaked information, whether a photograph, a text, or a confession from an insider, added layers of complexity, ensuring that neither Kirk nor Rasheeda could predict or fully control the narrative. As days turned into weeks, the pressure continued to mount. Kirk oscillated between frantic attempts to make amends and moments of paralyzing despair. Every public judgment, every meme, and every critical comment acted as a constant reminder of what he had risked and what he had lost. Rasheeda, unwavering in her control of the narrative, used the attention to solidify her own public persona, projecting strength, resilience, and independence. She navigated the treacherous waters of fame, scandal, and personal betrayal with precision, ensuring that her authority remained unchallenged even as the world speculated endlessly. And yet, despite the careful choreography of public appearances and calculated social media posts, the private reality between them was electric with tension. Each conversation, each confrontation, each silent moment was infused with emotional intensity, uncertainty, and the fragile hope that perhaps, just perhaps, reconciliation was possible if approached with care, honesty, and strategy. The saga became not only a story of betrayal and scandal but a psychological test of endurance, resilience, and the capacity to navigate a world where private life had become a public spectacle. Both Kirk and Rasheeda were acutely aware that their actions, choices, and responses would be scrutinized, judged, and interpreted by millions. And the pressure of living under that constant gaze only heightened the stakes of every interaction. As the dust begins to settle, the storm of betrayal, scandal, and emotional upheaval surrounding Kirk and Rasheeda leaves us with more questions than answers, and the story is far from over. Fans are still reeling from the shocking confessions, the clandestine meetings, and the unexpected twists that turned what seemed like a personal struggle into a full-blown public spectacle. Emotions ran high throughout the saga, and the ripple effects continue to touch everyone involved. From family members navigating their own loyalty and disappointment, to friends who found themselves caught in the crossfire of trust and secrecy, to fans whose own perceptions of love, loyalty, and forgiveness are challenged in real time. We've watched the highs and lows, the desperate pleas, the icy silences, the moments of confrontation and raw, unfiltered emotion that exposed every fracture in a relationship once thought unshakable. Every message, every public statement, every social media post has contributed to a narrative that seems almost impossible to fully comprehend, yet impossible to look away from, leaving the world captivated, horrified, and eager for the next revelation. As viewers, we are drawn into the chaos, invested in the drama, and compelled to consider how much forgiveness is possible when trust has been shattered so publicly. How do relationships survive when the world itself becomes a judge, jury, and executioner all at once? Kirk's desperation, Rasheeda's resilience, Jasmine's subtle manipulations, and the public's insatiable appetite for scandal converge to create a narrative that is both deeply personal and unrelentingly public. A story where every moment carries the potential for redemption or ruin. And now, as we reflect on the intensity of these events, the emotional stakes, and the complex interplay of loyalty, betrayal, and ambition, it's clear that the saga has only begun to reveal its layers. The drama invites you, the viewer, to consider your own judgments and allegiances. Do you believe in second chances? Can love survive under the relentless glare of public scrutiny? Are apologies enough when the wounds are broadcast to millions? Your voice matters in this conversation. Your perspective adds to the ongoing discourse, and your engagement helps us understand the multifaceted nature of human emotion in the face of scandal. So now, we turn to you. Share your thoughts, debate the actions, and weigh in on the possibilities of reconciliation. Which side do you stand on? Are you rooting for Kirk's redemption? Or do you support Rasheeda's unyielding stance? Do you believe that time will heal the fractures, or is this a turning point from which nothing can recover? Engage with us in the comments. Let us know your take on the events that have captivated fans worldwide, and explore the nuances that only you, as a dedicated observer of this saga, can provide. Like this video if the drama has kept you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe to the channel to follow every shocking twist and emotional revelation as it unfolds. And hit that notification bell so you never miss a single moment of the roller coaster that Kirk and Rasheeda's lives have become. Share your theories with your friends, debate the implications of every interaction, and immerse yourself in a story that continues to evolve with each passing day. The scandal is ongoing, the drama is unrelenting, and the questions remain. Will Kirk's remorse be enough? Will Rasheeda find a path toward forgiveness? Or will the public spectacle and personal betrayal leave scars that can never fully heal? Your engagement, your opinions, and your insights make you part of this story, a community of viewers invested in the twists, turns, and revelations that define this saga. So join the conversation, voice your judgments, and immerse yourself in the drama. Because the story is far from over, the outcomes are uncertain, and the emotional stakes are higher than ever. Your thoughts shape the discussion, your comments fuel the narrative, and your participation ensures that you remain at the center of the unfolding tale. The world is watching, the drama continues, and now, more than ever, it's your chance to weigh in. Take a side, and become part of the ongoing conversation that surrounds Kirk and Rasheeda. Every like, every comment, and every share amplifies the story, turning the private struggles into a public discussion that resonates with fans, followers, and the wider world. So make your voice heard, engage with the saga, and stay tuned for the next chapter, because in the world of reality, scandal, and heartbreak, nothing is ever final, and the next twist could arrive at any moment. Don't miss a beat, don't let the drama pass you by, and remember, your perspective matters, your insights are valuable, and your participation transforms the unfolding scandal from mere spectacle into a shared experience where every viewer plays a role. Like, comment, subscribe, and let the story continue with your voice included. Because Kirk and Rasheeda's saga is far from over, and the world is waiting to see what happens next.